My name is Charlene Whitaker, 32 years old, and I work in commercial insurance underwriting in Chicago. My boyfriend said, "It didn't mean anything. She was just better than you at a few things." I replied, "Then she can be better at covering your bills as well." Then I canceled the lease and accepted the promotion, choosing to walk away and leave him behind in the silence. My days are structured in a way that most people would call boring until they realize boring is another word for stable. I review risk portfolios, calculate exposure, and make decisions that keep companies from making expensive mistakes. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, close enough to walk to work, and I like routines that don't surprise me because surprises cost money in my world. I pay every bill on time, invest consistently, and I don't build my life on vibes, I build it on numbers. My boyfriend is Marcus, 29, and we'd been together a little over 2 years. For the last 9 months, he'd been living with me because his work in event marketing is chaotic, and his income swings depending on contracts. When he moved in, we agreed I would cover rent and utilities while he rebuilt his savings after a rough stretch between jobs. It made sense at the time, and I told myself it was temporary, something stable people do for someone they love. Marcus is sharp, attractive, and very aware of it. He has this habit of framing criticism as honesty, like he's doing you a favor by pointing out where you fall short. Early on, I brushed it off as confidence because I prefer direct people, and I don't scare easily. I told myself he was ambitious, he was blunt, he was just trying to push me, and I kept stepping over little comments the way you step over cracks in a sidewalk when you don't want to look down too long. The shift started about 3 months ago when he landed a new account managing promotional events for a tech startup. Suddenly there were after-work drinks, networking dinners, and a lot of talk about high-value people in his industry. I listened without reacting. I'm not insecure, but I'm observant, and the way someone talks when they think you'll tolerate it tells you what they really believe. The first comment that stuck with me happened on a Tuesday night when we were eating takeout at the kitchen island. He was scrolling through photos and laughing at something. Then he said casually, "Some of these women I meet are on another level, driven, competitive, not comfortable." I asked what that meant, and he replied, "It just means some people settle too early." Then he looked at me with that tight smile he uses when he wants a reaction. I didn't give him one. Over the next few weeks, the comparisons got louder. He'd mention a founder who just bought a condo in River North, or a consultant who flew to Miami on a whim, or a woman who closed a deal at 26, and every story ended the same way, with a glance in my direction, like I was being graded. He never said my name in those moments, but he didn't have to. The silence did it for him. I work 50 hours a week, and I was up for a regional promotion that would require relocating to Denver. I hadn't told him yet because it wasn't finalized, and I don't operate on hypotheticals. I prefer facts, and I also knew Marcus treated uncertainty like a negotiation window, so I kept it to myself until it was real. Then came the night that changed everything. We had just gotten back from one of his work events, one of those spaces where everyone speaks in polished buzzwords and treats stability like a lack of ambition. I went to support him, and he introduced me to a group of people who spent the evening subtly dismissing what I do, calling it safe, calling it steady, saying things like, "Must be nice to have a job where you don't have to hustle," like having a predictable paycheck is a moral failure. On the drive home, Marcus was quiet, which is never a good sign with him because quiet means he's building a point. The moment we got inside, he set his keys on the counter, turned to me, and said it like he was smoothing the air before it got messy. "It didn't mean anything. She was just better than you at a few things." I asked who, and he shrugged like it should have been obvious. "Alyssa, the startup operations woman. Better network, bigger vision, more ambitious." He said it the way someone reviews a product. No warmth, no care for how it landed, just evaluation. Something in me went very still. Not angry, not loud, just quiet in the cleanest way. I stood there for a beat, then said the sentence that came out before I could soften it. "Then Alyssa can be better at covering your bills as well." Marcus stared at me like he expected me to laugh and turn it into a joke. I didn't. He crossed his arms and leaned back against the counter, offended on principle. "Wow, so that's how you're going to take that." "How else should I take it?" I asked, and he rolled his eyes like I was being difficult. "You're so literal sometimes. I'm just saying she's better connected. She takes risks. You're comfortable. There's a difference." The way he said comfortable made it sound like my life was a compromise, like the things I worked for were the things people settle for when they can't get more. I kept my tone even because that's what I do when I'm processing risk. Are you unhappy? He hesitated, then said, Not unhappy, just aware. Aware of what? He looked at me and said it with the calm confidence of someone who thinks the hierarchy is obvious, that I could probably do better if I wanted to. There it was. Not anger, not heat, just assessment, and I've sat in enough rooms to recognize when someone is weighing options. I nodded once. That's fair. Everyone can choose what they want. He blinked, like he was waiting for the argument. That's it, I said, because in that moment, something clicked into place, and I didn't feel the need to chase clarity with noise. I walked into the bedroom, opened my laptop, and pulled up the email I'd been sitting on for 2 weeks, the one confirming the Denver promotion package and timeline. Salary increase, relocation assistance, title bump, more responsibility, more travel. I'd delayed responding because I was considering him, and that hesitation evaporated. From the living room, Marcus called out, Are you really mad about this? No, I answered honestly. I'm adjusting. He appeared in the doorway. Adjusting how? I submitted my acceptance for the Denver role, and the moment I hit send, it felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in months. You're being dramatic, he said, and I closed the laptop with a calm that surprised even me. No, I replied, I'm being practical. You would actually move over a comment. I looked at him. Not over a comment, over clarity. The silence that followed wasn't explosive, it was cold, and for the first time since we started dating, I saw something behind his irritation. Uncertainty. Because until that moment, I had always absorbed the criticism, always stayed steady, always provided. This time, I didn't argue. I simply chose. And he had no idea yet how final that choice was. The next morning felt almost offensively normal. My alarm went off at 6. I made coffee, checked my inbox, and there it was. HR from Denver, confirming the promotion package and relocation timeline. 60 days to relocate, 30 days to formally terminate the lease, with a buyout equal to 2 months' rent. It was clean, expensive, but clean, and I've always preferred clean exits to emotional ones. Marcus walked into the kitchen around 7, wearing one of my old college sweatshirts like nothing had shifted. He opened the fridge, glanced at me, and said, Are we still on for dinner with Olivia Friday? The casualness was almost impressive, like he believed the night before had been a blip instead of a fracture. No, I said calmly. We should probably start figuring out logistics instead. He shut the fridge a little harder than necessary. Logistics of what? I'm filing the lease termination today. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're still on that. I slid the printed lease agreement across the counter and tapped the early termination clause. Paragraph 12, 2 months rent penalty. I already emailed the property manager. He stared at the page like it was a threat instead of paperwork. We owe that. No, I corrected gently. I owe it. It's my lease. His jaw tightened. So you're just deciding for both of us. I'm deciding for myself, I said. You can decide what you want to do. He stepped closer, frustration creeping in. You're acting like I cheated. I didn't accuse you of cheating. Then why are you blowing up our life? Because I'm not going to compete for my own relationship. That landed heavier than anything else had. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once. You know what your problem is, Charlene. You're too comfortable. You think being stable is enough. Some of us want more. Then go get more, I replied evenly, and the room went quiet again. Not with tension, but with something sharper, recognition. I went back to my desk and transferred the lease buyout funds from savings into checking. I also removed him as an authorized user on my credit card, something we'd set up 6 months earlier to help him build credit. It took less than 30 seconds. He stood in the doorway watching. Are you serious right now? Yes. You're punishing me. No, I said. I'm separating finances before things get messy. Messy how? If you think there are better options, you should be free to explore them without financial overlap. His face flushed. So you're just giving up? I shook my head slightly. I'm declining to audition. That was the first time I saw actual anger replace the condescension. You're unbelievable. No, I replied calmly. I'm consistent. He stared at me like he was waiting for a crack, some emotional flare he could push against. But I wasn't flaring, I was finalizing. By noon, the property manager emailed confirmation of the lease termination terms. 30 days notice, 2 months rent penalty, final walkthrough required. I forwarded it to Marcus. From the other room, he sent one message back. You're insane. I walked into the living room where he sat on the couch, laptop open but untouched. "This doesn't have to be dramatic," I said. "You have 30 days to figure out where you want to go." "Where I want to go," he repeated, incredulous, like this is some solo adventure. "It is." He stared at me, disbelief sliding into irritation. "You think I'm moving in with Alyssa or something?" I shrugged lightly. "I don't think anything. You said she's better at a few things. Maybe housing is one of them." That hit harder than I expected it would, and for a moment he looked like he'd rather I had yelled. "You're being petty now." "No," I said. "I'm being consistent with your logic." He stood abruptly. "I was pushing you. That's what couples do. They push each other to grow." And I responded by growing in a direction that aligns with me. "You're running away." "From what?" "From competition. From ambition." I held his gaze. "I'm accepting a regional leadership role overseeing 3 states. That's not running." He blinked. "You actually accepted it?" "Yes." "When were you going to tell me?" "When it was finalized. It is now." His expression shifted from irritation to something closer to disbelief. "So you had this lined up and didn't say anything?" "I don't operate on hypotheticals," I said, "and I don't renegotiate myself based on comparisons." He paced once across the living room, then turned back to me. "You know what this feels like. It feels like you were waiting for an excuse." "No," I said quietly. "I was waiting for clarity." That word again, the one he dismissed the night before, and I got it. The air between us felt different now. Not explosive, just stripped down. He couldn't provoke jealousy because I wasn't reacting. He couldn't guilt me because I wasn't apologizing. He couldn't reframe it as overreaction because I wasn't emotional. I was organized. He tried one more angle. "So what? You're just going to uproot everything." "I pay the rent here. The lease is in my name. The utilities are in my name. If uprooting happens, it will be organized." He stared at me for a long time as if recalculating whether I was bluffing. I wasn't. And that's when I saw it. Not anger, not superiority, but the first crack of uncertainty. Because until that morning, I had always absorbed the criticism and stayed. This time I didn't argue. I adjusted the balance sheet. He hadn't prepared for that version of me. That evening he tried charm. Marcus ordered sushi from my favorite place without asking. He lit the candles we usually save for anniversaries. He even wore the cologne I once told him made him seem softer, less sharp. The performance was subtle but deliberate, like he was resetting the mood to something warmer, something nostalgic. "We don't have to blow this up," he said quietly as we sat across from each other. I was frustrated. Being around those high-level people gets in your head. "That's fair," I replied. Relief flickered across his face, but I didn't let it settle. "But frustration doesn't justify comparison," I continued, "especially not framed as deficiency." He leaned forward. "I wasn't saying you're deficient. I was saying you could push harder." "I already push in the direction I value," I said calmly. "Which is safe," he shot back. "Which is stable," I corrected. He exhaled dramatically. "You know what I mean." "No," I said evenly. "Define it." He hesitated, searching for a phrasing that wouldn't incriminate him. "Bigger risks, bigger visibility, bigger circles." "And if I don't want those circles," I asked, "then what?" "Then you're limiting yourself. Or I'm choosing intentionally." That irritated him more than anger would have. "You don't want more," he said slowly, like he was diagnosing me. "I want aligned growth," I replied. "Not growth for applause." The silence returned, heavy but not explosive. When Marcus gets quiet, it means he's recalculating. He doesn't like losing leverage. So he switched strategies. "You know," he said casually, picking up his phone, "Alyssa asked if I wanted to grab drinks tomorrow." He watched me carefully. I nodded once. "Then you should go." He blinked. "That's it. That's it." He stood up abruptly. "You're not even jealous." "I'm not in charge of your choices." "That's not what I asked." I met his gaze. "If you need external validation to measure your value, go get it." His eyes narrowed. "You're being cold." "No," I said. "I'm being clear." He left around 7 the next evening dressed like it was a presentation. New shirt, different watch, hair done with more intention than usual. Before he walked out the door, he paused. "You're really okay with this?" "I'm not competing," I replied. He searched my face for a crack. There wasn't one. He came home around 11:15. Not drunk, not guilty, just unsettled. His energy felt different, like the script hadn't played out the way he expected. "Say something," he said from the kitchen doorway. "How was it?" I asked evenly. "Fine. Good. That's it." "That's it?" He stepped closer. He asked why you weren't threatened. "And what did you say?" "I said you're confident. Accurate." He watched me closely, then delivered the line he thought would provoke me. He said if I were single, he'd take me to Miami next weekend. And what did you say? I said I wasn't single. I held his gaze. But you're considering it. He didn't answer immediately. Silence confirmed more than words. I stood up. I scheduled the movers for 3 weeks from now. You should start figuring out your plan. His eyes widened slightly. You're not even going to ask if something happened. If something happened, I said calmly, you would have framed it as my fault already. He stared at me like I was speaking another language. You've changed, he said finally. No, I replied. I stopped negotiating my worth. The next 2 days were eerily quiet. No more comparisons, no more jabs. Instead, he became overly pleasant, asked about my day, offered to cook, mentioned Denver casually like he was warming up to the idea. I didn't engage emotionally. I answered politely and moved forward administratively. Movers confirmed, lease termination signed, security deposit forfeited, utilities scheduled for cancellation, HR paperwork finalized. On Thursday night, he tried one last pivot. If I came with you, he asked carefully while we sat on the couch, would this go back to normal? No. He blinked. Why not? Because normal included comparison, I said. I won't build on that. He crossed his arms. You're acting like I cheated. No, I said. I'm acting like I listened. He paced once. You don't even want to try to fix it. There's nothing broken, I replied calmly. We just want different atmospheres. That word annoyed him. So that's it. 2 years and you're just done. Yes. The simplicity of the answer hit harder than anything else had. You're really willing to lose me over pride. It's not pride, I said. It's alignment. He looked at me for a long time, waiting for hesitation. It didn't come. You'll regret letting me walk, he said finally. No, I replied evenly. I'll regret staying where I'm measured against other options. And that was the moment something shifted from irritation to panic in his eyes. Because he realized this wasn't a fight he could win by being louder. It wasn't a fight at all. It was a withdrawal, and withdrawals don't argue. They simply happen. The last week in Chicago wasn't dramatic. It was administrative, and somehow that made it heavier. Movers confirmed for Tuesday. Lease termination paperwork signed. Utilities scheduled for cancellation. I forwarded the final walkthrough date to Marcus without commentary. We spoke only in logistics, as if we were dissolving a business partnership instead of a relationship. He tried one more pivot the night before the movers arrived. We were sitting at opposite ends of the couch, both pretending to scroll. If I come to Denver, he said carefully, is this just over? His tone was measured, almost strategic, like he was negotiating terms. It doesn't go back to what it was, I replied. What it was included comparison. You're holding one sentence over my head, he said, frustration rising. I'm holding a pattern, I answered calmly. The sentence clarified it. He leaned forward. You're acting like I cheated. No, I said. I'm acting like I heard you. He shook his head. You don't even want to try. There's nothing to try, I said. We want different things. You want intensity, optics, momentum. I want stability and respect. He stared at me, then tried one last angle. Ryan invited me to Miami next weekend. He said it lightly, watching my face. I nodded once. Then you should go. You're not even jealous. I'm not auditioning, I replied. That was the moment he understood something irreversible had happened. He wasn't provoking insecurity. He was confirming misalignment. The movers came Tuesday morning. Boxes labeled, furniture wrapped, my desk disassembled with quiet efficiency. I signed the final paperwork with the property manager and handed over the keys. Marcus stood in the doorway of the empty apartment, looking around like he expected some grand emotional collapse. You're really doing this, he said quietly. Yes, he swallowed. You're just going to start over. I'm not starting over, I said. I'm continuing forward. He didn't argue after that. He packed what he needed and moved in with a friend temporarily. We didn't shout, we didn't cry, we didn't negotiate, we just divided what was already separated. 3 weeks later, I landed in Denver. New office, new reporting structure, different altitude, literally and professionally. The first morning I walked into the regional office and sat in the glass conference room reviewing accounts across 3 states, I felt something settle in me that had nothing to do with Marcus. Momentum? He texted once after I moved. You really did it. Yes, I replied. That was the entire exchange. No apology. No reconciliation. No, I miss you. Just confirmation that I meant what I said. The following week, he tried again. Can we talk? There's nothing left to discuss, I replied. He called immediately. I let it ring out. You're really just going to erase me, he texted. You evaluated alternatives, I wrote back. I accepted that. That's not fair, he shot back. I was frustrated. Frustration doesn't include auditioning replacements. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Ryan isn't what I thought, he finally wrote. I already knew that. That's not the point, I replied. Then what is? You said someone else was better. You don't get to walk that back because the alternative underperformed. Silence. A minute later, he called again from an unknown number. I blocked it. Then I did what I should have done the first night. I blocked him everywhere, not out of anger, out of finality. Because closure isn't a conversation, it's a boundary. The first week in Denver was clean. No emotional noise, no passive-aggressive posts, no late-night what-if messages, just onboarding meetings, travel schedules, and structured growth. 8 months later, I signed on a condo. Nothing flashy, good neighborhood, walking distance to the office, predictable appreciation curve, stability compounds over time, and so does peace. One night, almost a year after I left Chicago, I got a LinkedIn notification. Mark has viewed your profile. No message followed. That told me everything. He didn't miss me. He missed access. Access to rent paid on time. Access to structured calm. Access to someone who didn't need to posture to feel secure. When he told me someone else was better at a few things, he expected me to react emotionally, compete, defend, negotiate. Instead, I adjusted the balance sheet, canceled the lease, accepted the promotion, relocated, and closed the door. If someone compares you to an alternative, believe them. If someone tests whether you'll fight for their validation, decline the test. If someone positions themselves as a prize, let them compete in their own tournament. He wanted intensity. I chose clarity. And clarity doesn't argue. It moves. Then it closes the door completely.